Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. If you missed the live webinars on Wednesday, March 6th, we are putting this recording online, for you. There is not going to be a Q&A at the end of this video. However, if you go under frequently asked questions, all of the questions that were asked during the live webinars, as well as the questions that we got in emails, those will all be posted there. And then as we get more questions and any updates regarding the RFP application, that will be posted in that section as well. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the presentation. There we go. So you should see, hold on here. So you should see the presentation on your side, hopefully. So to begin, my name is Erica Lewis. I'm the Collaboratives Director here with Idaho AEYC that I've been brought on to work with Preschool the Idaho Way program along with Martin Balbin. Today's webinar is to give an overview of the RFP application as well as the Preschool the Idaho Way programming. So our goals during this presentation are to provide you with an overview of that community collaborative model and how that model can be implemented in your community. We will talk about Preschool the Idaho Way, give a brief introduction as to that, define the community collaborative model, discuss expectations that we have for the grantees as well as what you can expect from Martin and myself. We'll do a quick tour of Preschool the Idaho Way toolkit and then end with the suggested timeline for the application and planning process. So I assume that most of us here that are watching this webinar, we are familiar with Idaho AEYC, but in case you are not, Idaho AEYC is a mission-driven organization that works to improve the quality and advocate for increased access to early learning programs throughout Idaho. We want an Idaho where our policies and our programs recognize that our youngest children need high-quality early learning experiences where they're able to grow and learn. We work to support local communities throughout Idaho in their effort to build and sustain early learning programs that support their children and families. Over the last 2 years, Idaho AEYC has placed an importance on increasing preschool options across the state. Through a generously funded grant from the Kellogg Foundation, we have been able to invest in research as to the need and want for expanding preschool options across our state, as well as the development of the community collaborative model. And this is how Preschool the Idaho Way was born. So moving on to an overview of Preschool the Idaho Way, it focuses on the development, expansion, and enhancement of preschool options across our state. It works through using a collaborative model that draws on local expertise and resources that are pulled together to offer affordable and comprehensive preschool services that wouldn't be available otherwise. This can be done through a partnership through community-based organizations such as Head Start, in-home and center-based childcare providers, faith-based organizations, school districts, charter schools, parents, and other stakeholders that have an interest in early learning. We've seen the success of this collaborative done throughout our state through several school districts, including Caldwell, Basin, Kendrick, and Murtaugh. If you go into our toolkit, you can actually find that information and see the stats and facts for those collaboratives and how they are working. What makes Preschool the Idaho Way unique is that toolkit that we've created for you to assist you in working through that planning and implementation process for your preschool program. The toolkit will be talked about here shortly, but before we get into that, we first need to have a common understanding of what the community collaborative model is. So again, going into that toolkit, under the introduction section, there is a document titled Toolkit Glossary. In this glossary, it provides definitions of some of that common language that's going to be used in the community collaborative model, as well as defining what is a high-quality preschool program. In that toolkit, it defines a preschool collaborative as a consortium of at least 2 of the following: business and philanthropic entities, public schools, private schools, community organizations, child care programs, Head Start, or individual community members that are organized for the purpose and objective in aiding in the provision of funds and providing community support, guidance, and participation in the delivery of preschool. For the purposes of this grant, we will have one organization that is labeled as the lead organization. This information is going to be really helpful when completing Section 5 of the RFP application. The lead organization is going to be from one of the three categories. That's going to be a child care center, a family care home, or Head Start. The second category is a school district or charter school. And then finally, a nonprofit organization such as United Way and YMCA. While one of those will be labeled the lead organization, you can have two or even all three working together in that community collaborative as the decision makers for that collaborative. That's something I want to point out here that's really important, is it doesn't need to just be one of those organizations working with community partners. It can actually be all three or even just two of those organizations working together to create that collaborative. Ideally, we would love to see all three working together, or even a school district and a child care center working together, because this just increases the preschool options that are available in that community. The lead organization has several responsibilities. Those responsibilities are going to include completing the RFP application. They will be the ones that receive the grant funding, and then also complete any necessary paperwork that Idaho AEYC may require. Some of this paperwork might be reports, a budget statement, any findings that are done through the planning process. This lead organization will also be the go-to organization for me, the collaborative director, whenever I'm handing out any type of communication. It's just easier to identify one go-to person, and then it's going to be up to that lead organization to disperse that communication to their other decision makers and to their community partners. And it's also expected and encouraged that the lead organization for the planning process is also going to be the lead organization during the implementation phase of their community collaborative preschool program. Okay. So moving on. One of the great things about the community collaborative model is it's not just the decision makers that create that collaborative model. It's also including community partners in that. Going back to that toolkit and that's available online, community partners is defined as those that have a mutual interest in seeing the collaborative achieve its preschool goals. They may not have a direct stake in the program, but they are there in a more supportive role. They may or may not be the decision makers in that collaborative, and their roles are going to vary in capacity depending on what that collaborative's needs are. Some of the different types of partnerships that are available or not available are defined as a spokesperson, a funder, a volunteer, connector, quiet advocate, and even opposition. It's really a great idea for collaboratives to have that input as to why someone may not be completely on board. It just gives you kind of an idea of the challenges and barriers that your potential collaborative program may face. In the toolkit, Section 3, Engage Partners, it defines these various roles such as the funder, connector, spokesperson, etc., as well as provides ideas for engaging key partnerships in your community. In Section C of the RFP application, it looks like this. This is where you're going to fill out potential community partners. We do encourage that each potential collaborative have at least 3 committed community partners. That doesn't mean that that's 100% in stone, but we did include that letter of commitment at the end of the RFP application. And this is really encouraged to start getting those conversations going and to getting that ball rolling into the planning process. So that section where it says select role from the drop-down menu, that's where you're going to identify those various partnerships, whether they are, part of the lead organization or if they're a spokesperson, a funder, etc. Here we go. So moving on. Let's go ahead and talk about the expectations. There are two types of expectations. There's the expectations that we have for the grantees, as well as what the grantees can expect from myself and Martin throughout this process. So for the grantees, we expect three things, and this is actually in section 6 of the RFP application, and it highlights those three areas that we expect. First, we expect grantees to utilize the toolkit. It is an amazing resource that is well developed that we encourage the grantees to utilize during that planning process. This is really going to ensure that your plan that you've created is well thought out and developed, that's going to meet those high quality requirements for that preschool program. The second thing that we want that we expect from the grantees is, again, that program is a high quality program and that there are various considerations that have been met, such as teacher requirements, curriculum, professional development, and even a matrix that's in place to measure that collaborative success. The third and final thing that we expect from grantees is an action plan. We want, at the end of the planning process, to have an actionable plan. So this way, when it's time to implement your collaboratives preschool program, you have everything out for you. And so, again, utilizing that toolkit, it's going to give you the resources, the ideas, the questions that need to be asked, any, key conversations that need to be done. That's really going to be a great resource for you. The action plan is going to be the foundation of phase 2, which is the implementation phase that will happen later this year. And before we move on to the toolkit, we need to discuss what you can expect from Martin and myself. Most of our responses to you are going to be in a very timely manner, most of the time same day. We do ask that you give us at least a 48-hour grace period, and this is just to take in consideration that we may be traveling and not be readily available to answer your questions. But for the most part, we're going to strive to go ahead and get those answered in a very timely manner. Excuse me. The second thing that you can expect from us is assistance in connecting you with other community leaders and potential partners in your for your collaborative. We will also offer technical assistance in regards to the RFP. And then even after the RFP application, during the planning phases and the implementation phases, we are here for you. So whatever you need from us, you just need to let us know, whether that is answering questions, having a brainstorming session, connecting you with various partnerships, with some funding streams. However we can be assistance and to serve the collaboratives better, that's what we're going to be here for. One of the things that we are most looking forward to with our various collaboratives is having those face-to-face meetings. And this is going to be a great time for us to get to know each other, as well as to have those brainstorming sessions where we can think of creative and unique ways that are going to meet your community's needs and to really create that collaborative program that is specific to what your community needs and wants. So let's go ahead and move on to Preschool the Idaho Way toolkit here. So it was developed to be utilized as a guideline in creating that local collaborative preschool program that focuses on high quality education, satisfying the 4 skills necessary for kindergarten readiness. Those skills are academic, behavior, cognitive, and social. The toolkit contains 7 sections, and they're intentionally designed to guide partners through that process of designing a community collaborative program that is authentic to their community needs. You can use the toolkit to find inspiration and to help you think through key decisions to bring or to enhance preschool options in your community. While it is intended to be comprehensive, the toolkit does allow for customization based on the dynamics of your community. From already talking to potential collaboratives, that starting point for each collaborative during this planning process, it's going to vary. We have some potential collaboratives that are just now putting their collaborative together. whereas we have others that are nearly through the planning process. They already have the logistics figured out. They have their decision makers in place, so they're a lot further ahead. Wherever you are at in that planning process, you can adjust the toolkit to match your needs. And while it is intended to be comprehensive, that toolkit does not need to be followed sequentially. You might start in section 4, which is build a collaborative, because you're still putting together your leadership team. Whereas some might be a little further ahead, so now it's time for them really to engage community partners and to find funding, so they might start in section 3. Whereas you have others that are a lot further down the road, and they're going to start in section 6, I believe it is, section 5, excuse me, where they're designing their preschool program. There's no right or wrong way in utilizing that toolkit. It's really going to depend on what your collaborative's unique needs are. So effective collaboratives are going to focus on what is best for the students that they are going to be serving, and to leverage each partner's resources. All parties, all the decision makers, they need to decide together who might bring the best asset to each component of that potential collaborative. Success also means thinking creatively to overcome any challenges that may present themselves, as well as taking advantages of opportunities that arise. There are 7 main considerations for your collaborative as you move through this planning process and utilize the toolkit. The 7 considerations are leadership, facilities, staff and professional development, monitoring and regulations, financing, transportation, and then finally recruiting. As you answer questions in that RFP application, such as identifying what current programs are available in your communities and what barriers that those programs may face, the toolkit is going to help you answer some of those questions. So definitely utilize the toolkit during the application process. So if you are a visual learner like I am, it really helps to divide this planning process into smaller segments that become more manageable. And so as you move through these segments, you're able to get to your end goal, which is have that actionable plan. I divided the planning process into 5 segments. They are the collaborative charter, leadership team, deliverables, outreach, and then finally the implementation. Under collaborative charter, this information is already given to you. The planning grants are going to range anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. That number is going to be based on your RFP application and your proposed budget and what you think that budget can be utilized for. The timeline for the planning process is going to be approximately 4 months. So figure May of 2019 until August of 2019. Just making sure that we are still recording here. Perfect. And then the scope of your project is to develop, enhance, or expand preschool options in your community. Under leadership team, that's where you're going to identify roles. You're going to identify who those decision makers are, as well as any stakeholders in your collaborative, and then identifying supporting partnerships. Deliverables, we're going to take into consideration such things as your budget, the planning grant, how is that being spent, making sure that you're staying on budget for that, as well as creating a budget for the implementation phase of your collaborative's preschool program. A timeline during the planning process, who's going to complete each task and what their responsibilities are, as well as a timeline for the implementation phase. It's really important that during the planning phase that clear expectations are set, identify whose role is what and when they're supposed to get done. Also during deliverables, you'll want to have some written documentation identifying what the barriers are for your collaborative's preschool program, any resources or documentation that's going to be needed for that programming as well. Outreach is going to include things such as community engagement, funding, recruiting. Community engagement is going to be really critical along with funding. For community engagement, that's when you're getting the community excited. You're getting them pumped up for what your preschool program is about to bring to that community. Funding is going to be an area that is going to be, you're going to want to devote some time to that funding area. simply because at this point in time, our grants are a one-time thing. They are not something that reoccurs yearly. So it's going to be up to each collaborative to figure out a way to make their preschool program sustainable throughout the years. Ideally, we would love to be able to help with that, but that's not something that is currently in motion at this time. And then finally, under outreach is the recruiting, because we need to have those seats filled for your preschool program. So it's going to be up to the collaborative to design, to come up with ways to really recruit in their community and to get all of those seats filled. And then finally, the implementation phase. And that's where you're going to have your actionable plan. It's going to be written and it's ready to go. So if you hand it off to someone, they're able to implement your preschool program. So let's go ahead and move online to the actual toolkit. Hold on here, I just gotta find it. Give me a second. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and bring up the toolkit. So you should see that on your screen right now. So this is under idahoaeyc.org preschool /preschool, excuse me. And then if you click on toolkit, this is what's going to pop up. So there's only a few sections in here that I really want to highlight. First, I already talked about the toolkit glossary, which is under the introduction section. That's where you're going to find those definitions, any of the common language that you're going to find throughout the community collaborative, as well as getting insight into what's considered a high quality preschool program. Section 1, make the case. Most of us here, we already know why early learning is important. We already know the statistics and facts on early learning. But whenever it's time to go out and engage the community and to build those partnerships, they may not be as familiar with the issue as you are. So section 1 is going to be utilized to find out what those statistics are and how you can use that information when talking to potential community partners. Community inventory, section 2. This is something during the application, because there are several questions in there that ask about current preschool programming as well as the barriers. Section 2 is going to be a great resource for answering those questions, as well as having information on what's currently going on in your community. Section 3 is engage partners. Again, this is going to be utilized on that application, answering section C, and as well as finding when it's time to do any outreach and you need to identify funding sources, like who can potentially be a funder in your community. Maybe there's several businesses that want to help your program succeed. Section 3 is going to give you ideas of how you can talk to those potential partners, as well as ideas of like what type of partnerships are available in your community. Section 4, build a collaborative. If you are just starting in this collaborative model and you might be identified as a lead organization, but you don't have anyone else on board, this is going to be the section where you're going to want to start. It's going to give you an idea of who could be decision makers with you, as well as potential community partners that you can have for your collaborative. Section 5, that really is toward the end of the planning phase, where you're going to look at that, because that's actually the design of your preschool program. The how-to guides, these can be used in conjunction with the sections above. For example, guide number 10, key audience, that's going to be something that you can utilize with section 3, engage partners. Guide 4, the collaborative timeline, that's something that you're going to be able to utilize when answering the couple of the RFP applications, as well as during the planning phase of your collaborative process. So definitely become very familiar with the toolkit. Spend some time going through each section and through each document on there. It's really going to be worthwhile to invest that time, because a lot of the questions that you may have, or if you're looking, searching for ideas, it's going to be found here in that toolkit. So moving back to the slideshow here, let's go. Okay, actually, let me stop that one. Let's go to, sorry here. Okay, so you should see up on your screen here. There we go. Let's go ahead and move on and talk about the suggested timeline. So there is a big announcement. If you watched one of the live webinars, we originally had the deadline for the RFP application as Sunday, March 31st, 2019. This has been extended, and the reason for the extension is to give school districts some consideration because they have spring break coming up, and those spring break times are going to vary between the 3rd and 4th week of March. And so to take in those school districts and some of the limitations that they may face because of that, we wanted to go ahead and extend that deadline. So the new deadline for the RFP application is on Sunday, April 7th, 2019 by 10 p.m. All of our stuff online has been updated, and there are any of the future communications that we have, it's going to show that updated deadline as well, which is Sunday, April 7th by 10 p.m. It is expected that when completing the application, much of the collaborative's leadership is already going to be established, or at least well on its way to determining who the decision makers are, as well as potential partnerships for that collaborative. Again, there is a letter of commitment that's included in the RFP application. Utilize that, get out there, start engaging the community, and find out who can be potential partnerships for you. All applicants will be notified approximately Wednesday, April 17th, 2019 of their application status. Though we have extended the deadline, we have not extended that notification date. So just keep that in mind. From the time of notification, community collaboratives are encouraged to complete that planning phase within 4 months. So again, going back to those that are visual thinkers like myself, this is how that planning phase may look. You will have the collaborative charter, project charter, same thing. That's already given to you. So you already have that done. Your leadership team, again, going through that RFP application, that's going to be pretty much established, or at least really well on its way. Excuse me. So by the beginning of May, that's already going to be done. By June, a lot of your deliverables should be considered, especially identifying current preschool programming in your community, as well as any barriers that programming face, and then any barriers that your collaborative may face. That can all be done by June. July is really when you want to hit that ground running and do a lot of that outreach. That's when you're going to find funders, you're going to engage the community, you're going to do a lot of recruitment. And then by August, you should have your action plan created and done by. So this visual is just a really great way to kind of see how you can break up that planning process into different segments that aren't as overwhelming, and it's just easier to stay focused so that you're achieving these, like the smaller task, versus focusing on the larger task and then missing some of that important information that's needed. So to close this presentation, there are several things that I want each participant to walk away with. First, that's an understanding of what Preschool the Idaho Way is and what our intentions are. Second, it's to become more familiar with that community collaborative model. Third, it's to understand expectations. We have expectations for grantees, and then you have expectations for us. Fourth is become really familiar with the toolkit. If you have not had the opportunity yet to really dive into that, definitely set some time aside and get familiar with the Preschool the Idaho Way toolkit. And then finally, a timeline of the application and planning process. There is not going to be a Q&A in this live video, but again, refer to the frequently asked questions, and that will be updated we'll try to do it at least 2 times a week, but at least once a week, those frequently asked questions will be updated. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to us, either myself, Erica Lewis, or Mountain Belden, and both of us will be able to help you. We'll help you be able to complete the RFP application, as well as whenever you're in that planning process, to help with that as well. Again, thank you for your interest in Preschool the Idaho Way community collaboratives. We are excited about what the future has in store for Idaho. We are one of 4 states where we do not have state investment in preschool, but that's okay because we're going to take matters in our own hands, and we're going to put the communities in charge, and they're going to bring something really special and unique to each of those communities so that we can really increase those options that are available to parents and help give our kids the start that they deserve. So again, thank you for your time. You have a wonderful day. Bye.